Hi everyone. In this demo, we are going to look at how Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform can work together with Microsoft Azure DevOps as well as Terraform. So as said over here, whenever there is an issue, bug, or enhancement being logged or raised in the Azure boards, the developer will write the code that is necessary to address the issue, comment it, and push it into the Azure repo, which is their source code management system. What will happen after the commit happen is that it is going to trigger a webhook towards the Azure pipelines, and the Azure pipelines is going to start the continuous integration, build and test process, after which we can get the artifacts published, and upon successful publishing of the artifacts and testing, Azure pipelines can then trigger Ansible Tower to move on to the next phase of continuous deployment and delivery, right? Since the continuous integration has been completed, right? Then what will happen at this point in time is that the Ansible Tower is going to trigger Terraform using the Terraform module that we have in Ansible. And what will Terraform do at this point in time is to create a new virtual machine in Azure Cloud. Then Terraform will inform Ansible that everything is done. And what happens after this is that the Ansible Tower is going to go and install and configure Apache Tomcat on the virtual machine. It will then download the required artifacts from Azure DevOps and deploy the WAR file to the virtual machine. Right, we will create all these things in a single workflow, and that ultimately, in the end, we are going to do a very quick sanity test to make sure that the applications have been successfully deployed on the virtual machine. So this is how the flow will look like for this particular demo. So just to show you guys my current environment. So this is my Azure, right? You can see over here that I have a couple of virtual machines. In particular, my Ansible Tower is running. The rest are not running, right? You can see over here that the Ansible Tower, right, has already been integrated with the Azure AD, right? So AD-wise is already done. So we just need to sign in right over here. Right, it's going to ask you for the login information, etc. Right, so in this case, I have my Azure Ansible user, right? I just have to key in my password, and then I'm in, right? So this is my Ansible Tower, right? You can see over here that these are some of the jobs that has already been triggered previously, right? And these are the templates that this particular user is able to see. So what will happen later on, right, is that Azure pipeline is going to trigger Ansible to start deploying the applications, as well as to trigger getting Ansible to trigger Terraform, right, to build the VMs. So let's go back to the Azure DevOps. You can see over here that this is the dashboards, right, for the Azure DevOps, right. Today, what I'm going to do is just to update a very simple Hello World application, right. These are the work which is assigned to me, right, and there are some other statistics and dashboards that can be seen over here, right. So if you were to go to the board itself, you can see that these are some of the dummy user stories that have been created. You can set tags, for instance, like saying that it is blocked, right. So over here, this is the user story that we are going to work on today. You can see that you can actually link it to all the different parts of the build itself. It will show you the status over here, right? So what we are doing here, right, is that we are just going to update the index file, right, so that it displays hello world 1, 2, 3 in state, and then we'll use Terraform to build the VM, right, with the image. Then we're going to use Ansible automation for the rest of the configurations and customization. Pretty much it is the same as what we have seen, right? So we just want to make sure that the goal is achieved after that, right? So if you were to go and look at the board itself, this what we have, right? So done, doing, to do. You can look at things like the backlogs. So as you can see, quite a few things that can be achieved when you use the Azure DevOps, right? Sprints as well, right? So it just gives you another view. So if you were to go and look at the repo itself, right? Basically, this is what I have over here, right, for building the application. Pretty much, it is similar to what was mentioned inside the documentation from Microsoft, right? So if you were to look at it, I basically just cloned whatever that is here, right? The only things that I have added, of course, right, over here is my pipeline YAML file, right? So I'm using the pipeline YAML file, right, to drive the continuous integration flow, right? So as you can see over here, right, what we are doing is that we are creating 2 stages, right? The first stage really is to build the applications, right? We are using Maven, right, to do a app build as well as unit test and code coverage test, right? And then after which we're just publishing the results. And then what happens over here, right, is that I'm doing the deployment itself, right, just to deploy the applications, and I'm telling Ansible Tower to start the workflow, right? Over here, we are starting workflow 28 with all the extra variables that we are sending in. So this is using the AWX command, right? Actually, a better way to do it, but really just to use a REST API. But in my simple demo itself, I didn't really use the SSL cert, right? So I'm using the command line instead of the REST API. But this thing will work as well. This is just a test that I'm doing, right? This is just a test of the endpoint to show that it goes through. Regardless, right? So you can see that all these variables, right? The variables itself, we are actually defining over here, right? So you can see over here, right, that we have defined all the variables that we are using. Over here, this is the password that we are going to use to log into Ansible Tower to trigger off the workflow. So all these informations are here, right? We are going to build a Ubuntu server, right, using Terraform, and that we are passing in all the other values and variables that's associated with this particular virtual machine. So all these things will eventually be sent over to Ansible, right? And over here as well, right, is that we are using SSH to log in, and after that we are just using the Ansible AWX command line to go and trigger off the workflow. So you have to fill in all this information, right? So this is going to be the information that you will key in, where's the target host, and how you're going to log in, and the keys and all those. Right. So with all this, you'll be able to start the actual deployment itself. Right. So let's also take a look, right, at what we are doing, right, from a workflow perspective. Right. So you can see over here, right, that the workflow that we are going to trigger is going to be this. Right. So if you have the workflow visualizer, you can see that the first thing that I'm doing is that I'm getting Ansible, right, to trigger Terraform, right, to create a virtual machine based on the specs that we have sent across, right. Then I'm creating a new host, right, in the inventory file, and then I'm installing the Tomcat on the virtual machine. downloading the newly built artifacts, right? And after that, deploying the artifacts and doing a very simple validation test, right? So if anything goes wrong along the way, right, we can get Ansible Tower to perform a rollback, which in this case, the way that I'm doing it is I'm just making sure that the entire virtual machines and resource group is deleted, if anything goes wrong, right? Then we will just start from scratch. So pretty much this is what we have for the workflow itself. If you were to look at the playbook, right, you can see that, for instance, this is the Terraform role that we have, right? The task that we are doing, we are just generating the template, and after that, we are using the Terraform module to deploy the Azure resource, right? If you look at the template, the Ginger 2 template that we have, right, pretty much we defined the provider, right, with the relevant information, right? And after that, I'm creating a Azure resource group, which at this point in time, we do not, right, have any of this, right? So if you were to go back over here, you can see all resources. If I were to group it by resource group, right, you only have the Ansible demo as well as the network watch resource group, right? So what's going to happen, right, is that we are going to build the resource group if it does not exist. After which we will follow through the requirements, right, which is to set up the virtual network, the subnet. We are generating public IPs, setting up the security group and rules. In this case, I'm only setting up the base SSH rules, right? Then what will happen after this is that I'm creating a network interface and assigning the security group to the interface. Then after which, the storage setup, and we are just creating the virtual machine using all this after which, right? So pretty much what is going to happen is that we're going to use the Terraform module from Ansible to run this setup. Some other things that you can see, I think I did mention about the rollback, is that I'm just going to destroy the environment, right? So everything that I have going to create is that I'm just going to put it under /time, right, for the project path in this case. Yeah, so you can see over here that some of those things that we are doing is that we are going to get the latest build information, and after that, we're just going to download the artifacts based on the information that we retrieved from Azure DevOps, right? So these are the various endpoints. What else we want to show? So a couple of things that I did with the Tomcat, we're just building it on Ubuntu, right? So just installing things like the OpenJDK package and getting the files downloaded, and then setting up the services and the firewall ports. Towards the very end, what happened is that you notice over here that Ansible, right, also has the Azure security group modules, right, that you can see over here, right? The stuff that we can do, right, is that obviously we can use Terraform to do this, but what I want to show over here is that I want to make sure that all the config management, right, it's done by Ansible, right? So that there is a segregation in terms of what is being done. So what happens over here is that I'm just getting Ansible to allow port 8080 access, right? So that we can access Tomcat, and we can easily do this, right, with the existing Azure modules that we have from Ansible, right? So we just have to pass in all this information. It will achieve the effect of creating the appropriate security group that we need, right? So these are just some of the things, right? All these things I'm going to put it in the public GitHub repository so that you guys can take a look. Okay, so now that we kind of went through what we have set up, what will happen over here is that we can go back to the pipeline, right? Based on what we have in the user story, right? It's basically, as you can see over here, the stuff that we need to do, right? Is that we need to change it to hello world 123 exclamation mark. So I'm just going to go to index and do edit. So I'm just going to say update index, right? Um, right, based on whatever that we have here, right? And then you can link it to the work item. So in this case, I'm going to say that I'm doing it for here, right? Um, update hello world app, right? And after this, what we will do is that we're going to commit. So upon doing this, it automatically triggers a webhook, right? So if you were to go to the pipeline, you can see that the webhook is triggered. So over here, it's going to start to perform the CI, right? You have the Maven build. This is going to take a while, right? So if you were to, you can see over here that it's auto updated as well, right? So everything is all linked, so that it's easy for you to keep track of what is going on, that's related to the work item. So you just have to wait for a while for the Maven build to complete. Meanwhile, if you were to go back here, we can go back to the jobs tab. We'll wait for the task, for the API call to be triggered towards Ansible Tower, and to perform the task, or rather for the trigger to come, right? So that we will run the command to start running the action. Okay, over here we are publishing the artifacts, and as well as the code coverage, right? So you can see over here that it has created the artifacts and that all the tests has passed, right? So it actually moves on to the next stage. We just have to wait for a while, right? So you can see that the job is pending at this point in time. I have set an approval workflow over here as well before we can start, to deploy it to the production environment, right? Okay, so you can see over here that it says that we need to approve. So we review, and then I'm just going to say, looks good to me, approved. Right, so the job is going to start and run. Okay, it's going through the download, and after that, it is doing a SSH, right? So it is going to go towards the Ansible Tower, right, with all the information that we pass in, right? So you can see over here that these are all the info that we have specified in the Azure DevOps variables. So at this point in time, you can see that the workflow has started, right? So all these are the information that was passed through, right? So you can see over here that these are information coming from Azure DevOps. So the next thing that we will do is that we will check through what has been done so far, right? So we are starting to deploy the Azure resource after generating the required template for Terraform, right? So this is going to take a while, right? So if you were to go back to all resources, we do a refresh. Okay, it's still coming up. So let's wait for a while. So let's do another refresh. By resource group. So you see that we have a new resource group created, right, with all the informations that we have posted, right? So Terraform is creating the virtual machine and setting up all the resources. Right, so we wait for a while for this resource and all this information to be created, right? Okay, so everything is created in this case, right? So you can see that the resource has been created. We're just printing the results, right? So over here, you can see that these are the printouts. If you were to use Terraform, which I know quite a few of you guys do, right? So you can see what are the resources added, right? We do the printout of all this information, right? You know, and after that, what will happen is that I retrieve the public IP, right, of this new VM that was created as well, right? So this becomes an artifact that we will continue to use it for the rest of the workflow. Right, so if you were to go back to jobs, you can see that we would have gone to the second part of the workflow, which is to add the new VM to the Tower inventory, right? So if you were to go back to the inventory, you can see that the host, right, is added with this new IP address, right? So this is the one that we retrieved earlier on. So if we go back to jobs, workflow, right? So you can see over here that the next thing that we do, right, is to install the required packages that is needed to bring up our Tomcat, right? So all these things are the configuration piece, right? And it's all going to be handled by Ansible. So you can see over here that it has finished doing the installation, right? So we set up the required packages, created the user, get the files and all these other security groups set up, and then we restarted Tomcat, right? So the next thing that will happen, right, is that it will go and download the artifacts, right? And after that, deploy it on the target, right? Then the last thing that we do, right, really is to go and do a very simple health checks, right? So over here, we can see that I am checking, right, hello world, right, and then I'm getting back hello world 1, 2, 3, right? Um, So let's just make sure that it works, right? So from here, if you were to go to the application test VM, which was created, this is the IP address that we have, right? It's exactly the same as what we have captured in Ansible, right? So if you were to go and check on port 8080, hello world, right, you can see over here that we have the hello world 1, 2, 3 done. All right, this is the end of the demo. I hope that you guys uh, is able to see that Ansible, right, is able to work with Azure DevOps as well as Terraform, right, to build infrastructure as well as to deploy applications, right, in the public cloud quite easily, right. So all these things can all be integrated in a single CI/CD workflow, right, as what we have depicted over here, right, mainly with the CIPs being done in Azure DevOps and Ansible Tower work alongside with Terraform on the CDPs, including the building of infrastructure within the public cloud. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.